everyone to the Ward 1 meeting, community meeting for Monday, September 18th, 2023. My name is Bernie Schultz, and I'm the Ward 1 counselor, and I'll be hosting this discussion tonight. We have, first we'll have DPW Commissioner Nick Erickson. We'll make a presentation and then answer questions, and then he'll be followed by Chief Assessor Chris Paquette, who will also make a presentation and then answer any questions you may have. So we're going to start with Nick. He's got the presentation ready to go. Nick.
Thanks, Councillor. So the presentation I prepared for everyone tonight just kind of walks through some of the major construction projects that are happening in the city as of right now. It's not all-inclusive. Not everything's in there, but I wanted to give kind of a highlights reel of what's going on in the city. So with that, I'll begin. Next slide, please. So the DPW itself is split up into 6 different divisions: streets, water, wastewater, cemetery, parks and rec, and engineering. So each division is responsible for their own area of the DPW. So I've broken it out into the construction projects that are being managed by each division. So on the right here, you see just a map of the city, just to give you an idea of kind of what we're looking at. If you zoom in on that map, it's not clear in this picture just because it's kind of zoomed out, but that's a map of all the bridges and dams in the city. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the Streets Division. So right now, this summer, the Streets Division has been working on sidewalk projects in the Elm Street area, Bowtell Street. We'll be moving over to the Snow Street area, and then working on an ADA ramp on Main Street out in front of City Hall. So the Elm Street project is right behind the Senior Center, and that's focusing on ADA ramps and access to the Senior Center and the courthouse. Bowtell Street is a project that was completed this past summer, earlier on in the season, and that is at the intersection with Goodrich Street, and that's an ADA project to provide safe crossing for pedestrians through the intersection. So in the image in the top right, you can see where that's taken place. That's across Bowtell Street and across Goodrich Street, and that allows for better access to the park and the school that are down there. Then, like I said, on Snow Street, the work is around the Abolitionist Park, and that's a park that's a volunteer-based organization that runs the park, maintains it in cooperation with Fitchburg State. So the city, through CDBG, that's Community Development Block Grant Program, has used set some funding aside to improve the sidewalks in that area. So that larger photo to the left, kind of left center right there, that shows what's going to be included in that sidewalk project. So it includes new ADA ramps at each of the corners on Cherry Street, Snow Street, and Union Street, and then select improvements along that stretch of sidewalk. The sidewalk itself isn't in terrible shape, but there are some cracked panels that'll be repaired, and some curbing that needs to be reset. And then across the street there's a red box that highlights a big area along the shoulder of Snow Street. The goal there is to pave that to allow for additional parking for people that utilize the park. So we don't do a lot of in-house paving with DPW forces, but this year we did. We did 2 sections of the city. There was a lane on North Street that was really pothole-ridden. We milled it out and paved it using our in-house paving equipment. And we also milled and paved a small section of Ashburnham Hill Road right near the border with the town of Westminster. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ashburnham Hill Road. It's out in the country, but it serves as a cut-through to get from Westminster and Ashburnham into the city of Fitchburg and vice versa. There was a stretch essentially from Caswell Street down to the town line that was in really, really bad condition, essentially a dirt road. So we paved that earlier this summer. Our in-house forces pave not quite as efficiently as a contractor would, so it took us a little while to get that project done, but it's definitely a big improvement over what was there. One of the main functions of DPW is to repair retaining walls throughout the city. Back in July, we had a large rainstorm we had a retaining wall on Omena Place collapse, actually. So DPW just finished repairing that last week, and we're putting a fence in along the top of the wall right now. And then we plan to work on a wall on Academy Street out in front of Longs Joe School that's starting to fail. So that work is planned before the start of the winter season. And some ongoing projects that we always focus our efforts on are catch basin repairs, culvert cleaning, brush cutting, street sweeping, and line painting. That picture in the bottom right is a catch basin that was repaired on Oak Hill Road down near the bottom of the hill, right where the bridge is before you get to River Street. So before I go on to the next slide, I'll pause there. Anyone have any questions? Comments, concerns? Okay. Next slide, please. So this slide is about the Water Division's ongoing projects. Right now there's a very large project centered around the 2 treatment plants and some of the remote water supply sites throughout the water supply system. So it's the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition Upgrade Project, and we say SCADA for short. That's the acronym that we use. And that is a project to replace all of the control and telemetry systems at the 2 water treatment plants and a few of the pump stations that feed into the water treatment plants. That project has actually been in the works since 2019. It was put on hold during COVID, and shortly thereafter we faced a chip shortage that delayed a lot of the parts that are required to complete that project. So now that chip shortage is kind of past, we're getting back into it. We've received all the parts that we need to be able to complete that project, and it's underway right now. And that involves actually taking the treatment plants offline for a short period of time. So there's a lot of logistics involved to make sure that we are able to supply the city with water while we're still getting that project done. In design right now are 2 large water main replacement projects for Main Street and Boulder Drive. Boulder Drive is a little bit further along than Main Street is, and both of those projects are being funded using the American Rescue Plan Act money that the city received. So in all, between those 2 projects, roughly $11.5 million will be spent to design and construct those water main replacements through Main Street here and then Boulder Drive right behind us. Earlier this spring, we also kicked off the Oak Hill tank replacement project. So the picture on the right that you see is the hole that was left after we demolished the existing Oak Hill tank, which was roughly 100 years old, and a new tank was put in its place. So that project is very near to completion. The tank is already back online and functioning, but I think it's impressive to look at this photo because it's such a large excavation in solid bedrock where the tank originally was constructed. You know, once you get the tank out of the ground, you really start to understand how large of an excavation that really is. So we're happy to get that tank back online. It was long overdue to be replaced. And the photo in the middle there is a water main replacement on Depot Road that happened last fall. Not something applicable to the projects ongoing right now, but I thought it was a good shot of a water main being replaced. You know, that's what we have to look forward to for the Main Street and Boulder Drive projects, essentially. Next slide, please. So next we'll talk about the wastewater division's projects. Most notably, we have the CSO 10 combined sewer separation project going on right now. So that is the project that's required the detour on Main Street that everyone has to deal with right now. And essentially, we're separating out the storm sewer from the sanitary sewer. So right now, all the rainwater plus all the sanitary flows are combined into a single pipe. And that's problematic because when it rains, it sends all that rainwater down to the treatment plant, and we have to treat rainwater. And a lot of times during a really large storm event, it causes us to go into bypass mode because we can't handle that large influx of water. And so what we do when the plant goes into bypass mode is we hit it with just a really high-level treatment, and then the rest goes right out to the river. So it's not the most sanitary thing. So the city's goal is to separate out all of the combined sewers by the year 2030, and we're well on our way to doing that. The two larger projects are the project that we're in right now, which is this western end of Main Street area, and then the project which will be beginning next summer, which is the Main Street area from essentially Prospect Street to Blossom Street and north of Main. So that whole area north of Main is what we'll be getting into next year. But right now we're working on the area on the western end of Main Street that's shown on the map that's on the screen here. This is the CSO 10 project, and it involves the area essentially from Westminster Hill Road or Ashburnham Hill Road over to essentially Prospect Street. So that section of Main Street that's shut down right now, there's a large diameter sewer main that's being installed approximately 16 feet below grade. And in order to accomplish that, there needs to be significant trenching and shoring done. So that's the reason that Main Street is closed right now. So we anticipate that work to be done November 15th. And then after that Main Street work is done, they'll move up to the higher elevations that are within this project area shown here. Then we also have a project that just went out to bid, and it's control room and laboratory upgrades for the East Wastewater Treatment Facility. So all of the city's wastewater runs to a plant that's actually located in Leominster over near the city's airport, and that's our East Wastewater Treatment Facility. So that facility's been upgraded over the years, but we have a control room and a locker room that are both very old and need to be rehabilitated. So that's what that project focuses on. So aside from what's mentioned here, we have additional combined sewer separation work that needs to happen between now and the year 2030 so that we can meet our goal to separate out the entire combined sewers within the city. And those projects kind of focus in areas closer to the treatment plant, so Airport Road, Benson Street, some of those areas down there. Before I go on to the next slide, any questions on the wastewater division's projects? All right, next slide. Cemetery Division is also working on a couple of key projects. We just completed the expansion of Forest Hill Cemetery, and the photograph on the right has a little area there. It's not quite as visible on the screen as it was on my computer, but there's a red line drawn around the section that we recently completed, and that's right next to the intersection of Rollstone and Franklin, kind of closer to Memorial Middle School. So that area historically hadn't been occupied by any graves, so we actually built a retaining wall along Rollstone, raised the grade there to level it out a bit. We installed drainage because that area gets a lot of water, and we created space for the installation of approximately 700 additional graves, and that'll get us an extra 3 to 4 years out of this cemetery. Forest Hill is the last remaining active burial ground in the city, and we're very quickly running out of room there, and that's going to become very problematic within the next 10 years or so. So we bought a little bit more time with the project that we just completed, but we need to find another spot to expand the cemetery at some point within the next several years. So just south of this, on this image, just south of Electric Ave, there's another parcel that the city owns that we're targeting for that expansion, but it's got quite a slope on it, and it's got some water issues. So from a civil engineering perspective, there's a lot of work that needs to be done before that's a viable expansion site. And with that slope and the drainage issues, there's going to need to be a lot of site work done, and that site work costs money. And right now, the city doesn't necessarily have the funding to sink into that site. So we've bought ourselves a little bit of time with the expansion that we just completed. I think the area looks fantastic. The only outstanding piece is the paving of the pathways through that expanded area, but we'll need to continue working to expand that area south of Electric Ave. And the other major project that the cemetery is working on right now is the rehabilitation of the mausoleum that's at Forest Hill, and that mausoleum is shown in the bottom right image. It was constructed in, I believe it was 1916 or thereabouts, and over the years it's fallen into disrepair. Since approximately 1972, 1973, there's been significant roof leakage issues, and that's contributed to the deterioration of the interior of the structure. So we recently hired an owner's project manager and are in the process of selecting an architect to design the rehabilitation repairs. Construction funding for that has not yet been determined, so that's another outstanding funding issue that the city will need to work out within the next few years. Any questions about cemetery divisions projects before I go on?
As far as the mausoleum, what's the estimate on the cost to rehab that building?
So right now, the estimate's $2 to $4 million, depending on the bidding climate when we actually advertise the project for bid.
That won't be for a while, though.
Probably another year or two. So we just had a round of interviews with the architects that submitted proposals for this project. So we've narrowed it down to our top architect, and right now we're negotiating the price essentially with that architectural firm to complete the design of these repairs. Okay. So once that design is complete, then we'll have to identify a funding source, then go out to bid for construction, and then get the project completed.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Parks and Recreation Division, they've got two rather large projects going on right now. The first is the Mirror Lake Accessibility Project. This is a project to create ADA accessible pathways over to the gazebo alongside Mirror Lake. This was funded through grants. I believe it was I want to say a Mass Trails grant or something like that that funded the initial design. Right now we don't have construction funding for it, but we do have bid documents ready to go once we're able to secure construction funding. And that project's been in the works for several years. And the other project that we have going on is an exercise facility at Coolidge Park, and this is also being grant funded. We actually have the equipment being delivered to the DPW on Thursday. So this is an outdoor exercise facility. In the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, that's a map view of Coolidge Park. You can see a little red rectangle that's drawn just north of the pool, just to the east of the volleyball courts. And that's the area that's being targeted for the construction of this exercise facility. So this will likely begin next spring. And essentially, we need to come in and pour a concrete slab, and then from there, we can install the equipment that's been grant funded and will be delivered to the DPW on Thursday. So that'll consist of different exercise stations that people can utilize, and it's all completely outdoors, so it'll be a nice little facility. You know, if parents drop their kids off at the pool, they can go use the exercise facility. You know, if their kids have, say, softball games or whatever at the park, they can go over there. So it'll be a nice addition to the park. And our new recreation director's been fantastic in securing the grant funding to get that project done. Any questions on these before I move on? Yes?
I have a plethora of questions to probably throw me out. I use Coolidge Park often. My wife and I walk there several times, several days during the month of July when the beautiful sunshine was out and glistening over the pool, the beautiful clear water. They had all those beautiful water toys, etc., overflowing, and there was nobody there. There was no children, there were no parents. This was a weekday. Not only one day, but it was several days. What's happening?
With what?
What's happening with the recreation? There was no recreation taking place. There's no baseball game. Is there a Little League there any longer? Is there softball teams there any longer? Are there soccer games there? I haven't seen any past couple of years.
So I know Fitchburg.
Do you know that? Are you aware of that?
So Fitchburg Youth Soccer utilizes the park on weekends, I'm sure. Probably not. Fitchburg Youth Soccer utilizes Coolidge Park. There's leagues that utilize the softball fields. Little League Baseball is not at Coolidge Park. They utilize, I believe, Bartley Nolan, which is over off.
Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson.
Excuse me.
The field is only used on the weekend? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sure.
It seems that way.
I don't necessarily
seems
have all the league schedules for the city memorized, but
The kids practice every day during the week, at night,
But not typically in the summer.
not in the summer.
So that would be, they would be seasonal, so.
And July was a rough month for the pool. They had a lot of chemical issues.
yeah.
Is what?
July was a rough month for the pool. They had a lot of chemical issues.
Oh,
We couldn't get the pH balance. and-
Okay. However, there are several other months in the summer. August, no action, no activity, no one's using the pool. The dogs were exercising more than people. They had a great dog park. What's happening with the park? There's no activity there any longer.
I mean, maybe not during the hours that you're there, but people use the park pretty extensively. Between street hockey, softball, those are pretty heavy uses.
They have street hockey there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I beg to differ on the pool.
Okay, well, that's good.
I mean, the pool might not have been utilized while you were there, but
Addressing the pool issue, which I'm sure is costing the city some funds. It might be state funded or federally funded. But what's happening? There's no activity in the pool. Okay, you have chemical issues all month, entire month, 2 months.
the pool gets utilized pretty heavily. Maybe not during the hours that you're there visiting, but trust me, I get a lot of complaints when the pool's not open.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I'd be interested to see those complaints. It was like a ghost town. I mean, it was awful. I have a question about other projects that you displayed on the view box up there, but I guess we'll wait till the end of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've paused and asked for questions at the end of each slide, so that was the invitation for questions.
Well, I do appreciate your great diagrams, your aerial views, et cetera, of sidewalk projects, water mains, tank replacement. Where does street repair and pothole repairs come in a schedule of priorities?
So we send out a pothole crew at least daily. Sometimes we send out two when we have really bad issues to deal with, like flooding that happened in July. Sometimes we can't field the pothole crew, but generally every day one goes out. We paved Industrial Road and Kimball Road this year so far. We're working on bid documents for Clarendon Street. We're working on bid documents for an on-call paving contract, a 3-year on-call. We're working on bid documents for an on-call construction contract, also a 3-year. We're working on bid documents for an on-call pavement preservation contract. So that's crack sealing, fog sealing, et cetera.
Are the streets going to be repaired? Are just potholes randomly going to be filled in?
I'm not sure how to answer that because the streets are repaired.
Streets and roads.
We repair the roads to the best of our ability with the funding that we have. So Kimball Street just got repaired and repaved this year. Industrial Road just got repaired and repaved this year. We paved in-house Ashburnham Hill Road this year. We paved a section of North Street in-house this year. We patch potholes daily.
Have you ever heard any complaints about other people saying that the roads in Fitchburg are deplorable?
Yes,
Okay.
trust me, I have.
Okay.
I've grown up here my entire life.
That's why I asked you, where in the list of priorities does this street receive attention? It looks like it's pretty far down the list. People,
50 miles of roads here that need to be done. And there are a lot of infrastructures underneath that need to be done.
and we don't travel on the infrastructures, we travel on the top of the infrastructures.
Yeah, but if
People have lost their bumpers, tires, front ends, shocks, rear ends, and everything of that nature. And,
Talk to your
we don't,
state rep about
we
Chapter
understand
90
the
funding.
infrastructure.
If they don't
Talk to your
fix this,
state
you
rep
get backed
about
up
Chapter
soon in your
90
house.
funding.
Yeah.
Chapter 90 funding funds the roads.
I'm sorry?
Chapter 90 funds, which come from the state, do a lot to fund the roads.
Oh, okay.
The city has-
Obviously, it's inadequate.
Well, Yeah.
It's gone up in 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are other funds that fund the road, that come from the city, are there not?
The state,
Right,
it's
but
the
most of
state.
the-
From the city. There are funds.
But there's more funding that comes from the state.
So most of the paving money comes from Chapter 90, which is the state. Occasionally, we'll get money from the city. So the mayor's office appropriates money towards different paving projects. Clarendon Street's a good example of that.
Yeah, I have to stop you right there. When you use the word occasionally, that's what I'm concerned about. Occasionally is not enough.
Every paving project outside of Chapter 90 that I've been involved with since I've started has come from a free cash appropriation through the mayor's office.
Yeah, well, I think there's a misappropriation of funds from the city. That's my opinion. When they can appropriate millions of dollars to repair this facility, the library, this facility.
Paul, it's different buckets of money, Paul. You can't take out a loan to pave the roads. You can't do that. You know, it just doesn't work.
Okay.
And the other thing that Nick didn't mention,
For example, Bernie, did not the city appropriate $10 million for the library in addition to federal funds or state funds?
but it's a $40 million project.
It's a $40 million project. Okay. 10 million of it was from the city, correct?
Can Nick finish his presentation? Paul, we can, you know, you can stay afterwards and discuss this, you know, but
Well, I understand, but he said that there were any questions related to that.
Nick, why don't you- why don't you go?
Pictures of sidewalks being built, sidewalks absolutely necessary?
Sidewalks are very important for our children, Nick, Paul. Very, very important. They need to get to the bus stop, you know?
But what do you do when cars are parked on
The
the
children are gonna
sidewalks?
fall into the potholes.
What projects, what areas are taken into consideration first, second, and third?
For roadway paving? So every 3 years, the engineering division goes through and ranks each street essentially and assigns it a pavement condition index score, and that's based on its condition at the time. And those PCI scores are then put into a database and ranked from 100 being the best and 0 being the worst. And that kind of forms the starting point. But then after you look at the PCI scores, then you have to consider what you have available for funds, what the outstanding utility needs are. As I understand, we drive on the surface, but if you're going to sink $1 million into paving the surface, you want to make sure you don't have to dig it up shortly thereafter to fix the water lines and all that underneath.
One thing that's going to be happening, Paul, too, with the Water Street and the Boulder Drive projects that Nick mentioned, after those water mains are replaced, those roads are going to be paved. Main Street and Boulder
Where's that
Drive.
money coming from?
And that's coming from the federal government.
Oh, good, great, okay.
Yep.
But I did hear you say that the water main replacement was an ongoing project. Can you define ongoing?
Well,
Every year?
The design for Boulder Drive is nearly complete, and it'll be going out to bid very shortly. I'd say within the next 2-3 months, and then the construction will start thereafter.
Construction is gonna start by Boulder Drive, which means they're gonna dig out the road to put in the, they can't feed the pipes through one of the potholes, could they?
Do you want to have a serious discussion here, or are you just here
So
to...
what you're saying is an ongoing project. Forever, or for a long time, the roads are gonna be dug up, right?
Until
And
the
detours.
infrastructure is replaced. I mean, this is what's challenging, because people want a smooth paved road. They don't want it to get dug up for utility work, but then they get mad at us when we do the utility work. Well, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, we have to do the utility work so we don't have to dig up a road, and that's the only way to guarantee that it's not going to be ripped up in a couple of years. So unfortunately, people have to suffer through construction to get to that point. We can't just magically, use our minds and the water main's replaced, you know? We have to actually dig to install infrastructure.
Number of streets in Fitchburg at the present time that are dug up. I bet there are quite a few.
There's probably quite a few right now.
That's progress.
That's the nature of construction. You've got water, wastewater, and Unitil gas all underground, in addition to Verizon, Comcast, and Unitil Electric.
All at the same time.
They're not happening all at the same time. But we try to plan so that one utility goes in first, and then another follows, and then another follows, then another follows, then another follows, then we pave the road. So what's happening downtown is gas is going first, then there's combined sewer, then there's water, and then the road gets paved. Boulder Drive, gas was done, combined sewer separation work is ongoing, water main replacement will be done, and then the road will get paved.
That's just one section of that road.
That's just one section of the city.
We're gonna be looking forward to that ongoing project. Okay.
But you know, not to get off track, but we're having a lot of construction going on our street, Apple Tree Hill, Mount Vernon, and that's creating more potholes, not less. You know, they're replacing lines, gas lines, electric and all, and it's kind of like a patch job. You know what I'm saying? And I asked them, are you going to come back to repair all the new holes, potholes that you created? He looked at me and he says, do you want us to?
So Apple Tree Hill, I'm fairly certain just got paved. I think they just milled and paved the trench out there.
They patched it. Yeah, they did.
But that didn't take care of all the potholes.
I mean,
You know, it took care of the area they were working on.
and that's all that they're required to fix, unfortunately, is when they dig the trench, they're required to restore the trench, not necessarily repave the whole road. I mean, if they're creating new holes, then we need to hold them accountable to repair those holes.
I would think.
I don't disagree there.
Okay, Nick, you want to move on? I think you're all set?
For now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bernie.
Okay. Next slide, please. So here's some of the engineering division projects that are ongoing. I think we talked about a few of these already. This summer, we repaved Kimball Street. We repaved Industrial Road. We're working on contract documents for Clarendon Street. We're working on contract documents for a 3-year on-call construction contract, a 3-year on-call paving contract, and an on-call pavement preservation contract. As soon as those are out to bid, we'll get a contractor on board and start working on those. We've got a 3-year streetlight maintenance contract that's ongoing, and we utilize that to repair and replace streetlights when they burn out or get struck by vehicles or et cetera. We've also got an ongoing program to assess and repair our dams. The city owns 16 dams, and then there's a few that are privately owned that we try to pay some attention to just to make sure that they don't fail, because if they do, there'd be some critical loss to our infrastructure. So this was the point at which we were going to discuss paving, but I think we've already got into that a little bit.
Okay, Industrial Road, what an improvement. That was the ride from hell, okay? But why didn't they finish the top? There's something that's not finished up at the top.
So that's Game On Way. So after you get up Industrial to the intersection with Victoria Lane, there's Game On Way there. So that's going to be taken care of underneath our 3-year on-call paving contract. But essentially, Game On, the facility that's up there, the soccer facility, they're on the hook to pave that section of roadway and fund the improvements there. And we're working on getting that funding through planning board and making sure that we're all set there before we go ahead and spend the money, and then maybe Game On doesn't reimburse the city. So we want to make sure the money's in the bank before we go ahead and actually do the work.
Okay, next thing. At the Water Street and the bridge, okay, what bridge is it? Fifth Street Bridge? I still call it Fifth Street Bridge. The other street across there, I think it's Boylton.
Boyle Court,
Okay?
yeah.
Right there, there's this massive pothole. It's been there a long time, but they covered the potholes over there, but they didn't do that one. That's right there. It's still there. I noticed it the other day.
Right at Boyle Court?
Yeah.
Which way is best to report things like that? ClickFix or calling DPW?
Either one. ClickFix.
I mean, I had successful quick fix that done things right away.
I mean, Quick Fix is, I'd say, the best way to do it. Our superintendent of streets gets those reports. He takes all the C-Click fixes, he puts them into a spreadsheet, and he prioritizes it based on how many reports per street, essentially. Like I mentioned earlier, we've got one pothole crew that goes out daily, and they've got certain roads that they're assigned to. If it's just a single pothole on a street that's otherwise, good, that's a really quick fix. They go over, they take care of that one pothole and move on. Roads like Pearl Hill Road, Arnhow Farm Road, and a few others that are in very, very bad condition. It's not quite as simple as just going over and filling a single hole. Essentially what needs to happen is, you've got to apply a shim coat by hand over the whole area that's affected, not just a single pothole, but usually it's multiple potholes on top of potholes, on top of old patches that are all starting to peel back and decay. And that takes a lot of hot mix asphalt. So we stagger our trucks so that there's one ready full of hot mix returning just as guys start work, and they can put down all that hot mix, and then they take their lunch break while truck's getting another load of mix and coming back, and then occasionally they'll go and send a third truck for the day, depending on where they're at, how many drivers are available, etc. So sometimes the amount of hot mix dictates where we send the crews. Because if it's like a Pearl Hill Road where we know we need all of the hot mix for that whole day on one road, then we've got a plan to be out there the whole day. But if we've got a day where we want to hit, a few smaller holes across the city, we'll kind of take all the smaller potholes, aggregate them into one list, and then send the crew kind of hopscopping around the city for that day. So there's a little bit of strategy in it. It's not necessarily taken in order of pothole reported. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Yeah. Yes.
Monument Road was probably paved 3 or 4 years ago. Did a great job on it. I've noticed, because I could have been done quite a bit to get rid of refuse. While going down that way, on the sides of the road, there's a lot of erosion. Tremendous erosion on some of the areas along Monument Road. And what's going to happen eventually is if that is not pulled back in again, that whole side of the road is going to start breaking down again. I also noticed that in the 5th Mass Turnpike also. Very, very deep ruts in the 5th Mass Turnpike from Oak Hill Road over to whatever that is, 13, no,
31.
31.
Thank
This
you.
road.
So just to bring that to your
Princeton
attention.
Road.
Okay.
Princeton Road.
Princeton, thank you.
Thank you for those reports. So back in July, when we had that massive rainstorm on the 16th, it caused erosion throughout the city, and we're still trying to catch up from that. Even on Rollstone next to Forest Hill Cemetery that we were just talking about, there's a huge ditch that washed out there that is on our list. But any of those erosion type issues, you can feel free to email or call the DPW, submit it on C-Click Fix. And those types of things which aren't quite as critical as, say, a gigantic pothole in the middle of Main Street, we kind of hit those as we can, Saw a couple other hands up. I think it was.
So, are you saying Unitil is responsible for taking care of the potholes they created?
So Unitil did work out on Apple Tree Hill, and if they created potholes out there as part of their construction operations, absolutely they should take care of those. So I can have a conversation with Unitil and make sure that they do take care of that. Are there any other roads in that area? Or is it just Apple Tree?
Well, they're on Mount Vernon now. Hawes is horrible.
Mount Vernon Street.
Mount Vernon.
Hawes.
Mount Vernon.
Get it?
Hawes is really bad. In fact, the equipment that they have when they're doing the work is pushed way up against the side of the road, and it's right into the trees. When we had all this bad weather, it makes you wonder, is that weakening the trees when it's pushed right up against them like that?
I'll have to take a look. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how damaged the trees are as a result of getting hit by their equipment. You know, if it's just pushing back some of the limbs, probably not too big of an issue, but if it's taking big gouges out of the main stem, then I could see that being problematic.
I don't say gouges, but just being so close and being up against it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just being close to it won't have a big impact on the overall healthiness of the tree. But if it's damaging the stem or the root system at all, then I'd be concerned. Any other questions?
Last meeting we had back in June, the mayor was here and asked him about, paving lines in the road, which like within a week, they started paving lines again. I've noticed in some of the major intersections, Laurel Street, Putnam Street, I noticed, and even further down going towards Market Basket, all the lines in the road to either go to the left, go straight, or go to the right, they're completely faded out. So you get people doing this all the time. Nobody knows where to go. Maybe some of the citizens in Fitchburg know, but anybody who's out of town doesn't know if they have to go to the left or the right. I'm just wondering if they can get up there and, pave some of those areas. And so just for a safety thing, just let people know which way to go.
We certainly can.
People that don't know, those lights are confusing, because if you're in the middle lane, you have a left turn light.
Where are you talking about? At Laurel
Water
Street?
Street.
Water and Laurel?
Water and Laurel.
Yeah.
You got three lanes, and the center light is right and left. So if someone's in the left lane, someone in the other, it can get confusing at times. Plus, there's no crosswalk lights there.
Right. Yeah, and that's a problem. That's
been for
several
months.
intersections throughout the city. So to answer your initial question, yes. So we have a certain fixed budget for line painting every year. So we start with the center lines and fog lines, and then we see where we're at after that's done. And then we concentrate on the major intersections and figure out what we're going to need to do in-house versus what we can actually pay the contractor to do. Doing it in-house, it's a little bit more difficult than just having a contractor do it, obviously, because it's our guys' time out there in the middle of the road, typically during the day, during normal working hours, and it's just not ideal. So we try to get as much work on the contractor's plate as possible. This year, we ran through most of our line painting budget with just the center lines and fog lines, but we were able to reclass some of that line painting money to a pot of money that DOT had given us for, it was titled Winter Recovery and Assistance Program money. So we utilized some of that to pay for Kimball Street and then line painting and a few other things. So my DPW dispatcher right now is in the process of putting together an inventory of all the major intersections and ones that have faded paint marks. And as he finishes that list, we're going to start assigning some of that leftover money to the contractors. We're getting close to fall. Once temperatures dip below like 50 degrees or so at night, that's when we start to not paint anymore just because it gets too cold and the paint doesn't dry right and all that. And then we put a pause on it until the next spring. So we can likely take care of some of these areas before it gets too cold. And I agree that Laurel Water intersection is pretty confusing, so that would probably be a good place to start. I saw your hand up.
Earlier this year, you were talking about bridges like the Ashburnham Hill Road Bridge and the Oak Hill Road Bridge. And the Ashburnham was going to do that in-house, from what I heard. Some kind of metal ring around that bridge. Maybe I misunderstood that.
So earlier I was talking about Ashburnham Hill Road. We did a little in-house paving job there. Which bridge on Ashburnham Hill Road are you talking about?
One that's coming up Route 12 going down.
It's in Ashburnham.
I'm sorry, Westminster Hill Road. Sorry.
Oh, Westminster. Oh, I know which one you're talking about. The one that has the Jersey barriers keeping traffic off the compromised section. So that one we're actually in the process of designing repairs and permitting those repairs for right now. So the Design's nearly complete, and we've submitted our draft documents to the various permitting agencies for approval. So it's in their hands right now to review and approve. Once we get the okay on permitting, then we'll finalize those documents and go out to bid for those repairs. That's a masonry arch bridge, and some of the masonry along the interior underneath has started to give out and is compromised. So the method of repair there is essentially to install a liner that goes underneath, and then the annular space between the liner and the masonry is grouted to kind of fill that gap. So it's a relatively straightforward repair, and it's less invasive than what you see going on like Circle Street, or what will happen on Water Street, or what will happen on River Street. And that's kind of where we're at right now with that. We received a small bridge grant through Mass DOT to help defray some of those costs. And I believe that grant expires December 31st of this year. So we're in crunch mode to try to get that done right now. One of the issues that we had was with one of the abutting property owners. They own some land that we need to enter onto and obtain a temporary easement in order to conduct the work. And the property is owned by a trust, and we weren't able to find the executor of that trust, or however you want to say that. So we finally found the lawyer that represents that trust. I'm not exactly sure how my engineers found that guy's name, but they were able to find the lawyer, and he was able to talk to his client and get whatever signature we needed. So those permitting applications that required that signature went in, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we're hoping to hear back on those relatively soon. So the next step is going to be to ask DOT for another extension, I think, just to make sure that we don't lose that grant funding. Yeah.
On the sidewalk, crosswalks that are there on Kimball Street, where one crosswalk light has completely been gone for a couple of months.
So which one is that on Kimball?
If you're coming over from Main Street and going on to Kimball, that light hasn't been there.
Is that a crosswalk button?
Crosswalk button used to be.
Okay.
It's a orange cone for the last few months. But a lot of those lights didn't work anyways. Because if you were on the far side of Water Street, cross over to the car rental place, that one, the red didn't work.
The pedestrian crossing light didn't work there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But on the crosswalk lights and crosswalk poles that are there, you can talk to Liz Murphy for funding through the ADA and whatnot, because that is for the betterment of the pedestrians. And you might be able to get some funding that way to...
So I know for the Laurel at Water intersection, Mass DOT is planning on replacing that bridge right there. Yeah. They're actually in the, I think, 75% design phase right now. So I believe signal upgrades are included as part of all that work.
Yeah.
So that'll get those pedestrian crossings all sorted out, hopefully.
That's a couple of years down the road with people that are crossing between.
That's true.
So it's not the safest place when it's all working, because you can have the crosswalk light on and they've got a red light and they come up Water Street and they go right through.
Okay. I'll have our guys look into that.
It's like the crosswalk lights here that flash orange. You stop walking and you get 2 or 3 cars that go sailing by.
Okay.
Being a walker, it's important.
Yes.
I've already been hit once.
I see you walking all over the city,
Yeah.
so we'll do what we can to get that fixed.
When is the Water Street Bridge going to start needing to be replaced? It was my understanding that they said about a year ago it was supposed to be in the fall of this year.
I've heard 2025
Yes.
for the Water Street bridges.
That's why it takes 2 more years.
Circle Street should be completed in April of 2024, And my understanding is that the River Street Bridge project will start sometime thereabouts also, so springtime 2024. River Street Bridge. And then Water Street Bridges will be 2025. Yeah.
As soon as they open up Main Street, then they'll close River Street.
There won't be too long of a gap
No.
between the two projects. So with the River Street Bridge, one lane will be kept open, and I believe the fire chief requested that the westbound direction be kept open. I could be wrong about that, though. I have to go back and double check my emails. Any other questions?
Are they gonna, in front of Viola's, they did the sidewalk, the entrance ramp, and when they paved it in front of it, there's a big gap for cars to come in. And a lot of our customers all complain about coming in to the parking lot.
So
It doesn't,
that shouldn't have been left like that.
Yeah.
That was a contractor problem. So our spec is a half-inch lip max, and it's like 2.5 inch. So we can come back in and tuck some asphalt there to kind of ramp it up.
sometimes when they're doing potholes and they got some extra, they can just stop by and,
That's the problem. We never have any extra.
Yeah.
There's so many potholes. But yes. Any other questions? Paul, I know you had one.
are you getting any sleep?
Not much.
No, I'll defer my questions to after the next gentleman.
Are you done, Nick, or you still?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it, okay. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Chris Paquette, I guess, is next up, Chief Assessor for the City of Fitchburg. Chris?
I thought it was good, the last line here is, there's a lot of damming in Fitchburg,
Yes.
spelled differently.
It's a good segue to me.
16 dams.
All right, good evening. My name is Chris Paquette, and I'm the Chief Assessor for the City of Fitchburg Assessor's Office. And my colleague has so graciously decided to join us. He's sitting in the back there, so I'll start and tell you a little bit about what we do, and a lot of it has to do with him, so he's kind of the face of the outdoors, so he'll be the one that's, you'll be asking what's going on or why are you in my yard when we get to that point. So once again, I'm the Chief Assessor, and what the Assessor's Office's responsibility is the collection and assessment or valuation of real property and personal property within a city or a municipality, a city or town, in this case, Fitchburg. My office consists of myself, Ryan Bove, who's once again in the back, the assessor, two clerks, Jerry Millette and Kelly Arsenault, and one part-time assessor, Tom Caputi, who is the retired chief assessor for the city. He's been around for quite some time. Our office basically goes around and measures and lists all properties, real and personal, so we do every building within the city, and in some instances for businesses we measure or count the contents of it for the collection of personal property. The city uses a company now, which we've partnered with 2 years ago, that's working out great for us, called Real Estate Research Results. And what they do is they specialize in the collection and valuation of personal properties. And we hired them because in years prior to my coming here, and I've been here almost 10 years, we've really struggled with the unique aspects of personal property. It's really its own creature, if you will. In this company, that's all they do. And now the Department of Revenue basically stated that they wanted improved data metrics for personal property, the most important being some of our larger taxpayers who contribute greatly to the tax base of the community. So we've been working with them to improve our data quality in the personal property area. We've also, since hiring Mr. Bove, improved on the increased number of property visits as required by the Department of Revenue. Each city and town has to make an effort to measure and list every property once every 10 years. And through some past structural changes within the office, we had fallen behind that. I was hired almost 10 years ago to improve that process, and at that point in time, we were behind by about 6,000 of our 13,000 parcels, and at this point in time, we're well on our way to being ahead of schedule in the valuation of those. So basically what we do is we go out, we measure every property we can, we track sales, and then once a year we do a full revaluation of the city based on prior calendar year sales. So for fiscal 24, we just completed our analysis using calendar year 23 sales. So fiscal year starts July 1st. Our date of assessment is January 1st, using the previous January 1st to December 31st, calendar year sales. What we do is we base any property that did not sell on a comparable or like property that did sell within that year, and that's how we adjust values. So if you've been living in your home for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years and you say, why did my property value go up? It's because somebody bought a home similar to yours last year, and that's what it's based off of. So in this instance, we expect the real estate market, inventory's low, interest rates have gone up. If I had a crystal ball, I could tell you it's going to stop at some point, but the real estate market is continuing to chug along. We've seen values increase this year from between, on average, 17% for a single-family home to 23% for a 3-family or a 4-family. And it's not slowing down. The number of sales are, but the number of increases aren't. So what happens there is the assessor's office is the valuation side of the equation. We take the income, which was voted on in June by the city council, which was the budget, and we divide it by the overall value of taxable property in the city to get a tax rate. I'll be sitting in front of the city council in approximately 3 weeks to discuss next year's expected tax rate and the valuations of the city, and they are up. The overall value of the city is up 12%. Last year it was up 12.5%. So we are seeing a tremendous increase in the valuation of the city. With that is an increase in taxes. So what we try to do is within our limited scope is to mitigate it. We value the city. We have the range of between 90% and 110% of the sale price. We currently keep the city at approximately 93% of sale value. So for every $100,000 in what you would expect to sell your home for, we value it at $93,000. So we're 7% below what the expected resale price of your property would be had you sold it last year. And moving forward, every year on an annual basis, we make adjustments to compensate for the market valuations. And we try to do what we can to mitigate impacts on the taxpayer. Does anyone have any questions about that? Perhaps the most confusing thing that happens in our office is figuring out what time frame it is, because we operate on a fiscal year using a calendar year from a prior years to make our analysis. So the other thing I'd like to speak to is a couple weeks ago there was a mayoral debate, and there was some people saying that, a lot of elderly people are having difficulty paying their taxes. We have statutory exemptions offered through our office, and I just wanted to mention that to anybody that's watching. The basis for those can be surviving spouse, veteran, blind, or senior. And basically, they're offered to anybody that's 70 years of age or older for the senior exemption in the city of Fitchburg. Or if you're legally blind and you qualify, you would receive it that way as well. And there are income and asset eligibility requirements that if anybody wants to contact our office, we'd be happy to let you know. You could either call if you'd like to ask questions of anyone on staff. They'd be happy to speak with you. that you can either come in and pick up a form if you think you'll qualify. We do ask for documentation. It stays in-house. It's all private. It's not public, subject to public inspection. We mail out forms. If you don't have the ability to come in, we can even have Ryan bring it to your house if you want. He's out and about. We try to do the best we can to accommodate. We are working on upgrades to the website as well, trying to get more information out there. In the last few years, we've updated our GIS, so all of our information for property records is online now. The ownership records are updated once a month. Real property records through Patriot are updated once a year, so you can receive the full current fiscal year assessor's card once a year. We're also in the process of updating that software as well. So we've had a busy few months in the office. And we try to do what we can to accommodate anyone that has any issues regarding valuations. Our office, speaking of valuations, is also responsible for excise tax adjustments. So if anybody purchases a new car at some point in time and they need an adjustment on their previous car's excise bill, they would come see us as well. And we try to be as helpful as possible and, answer questions as best we can. So, does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
What are you doing about people who are absentee landlords who live out of the area, like people who live in Boston or Worcester who own properties and are not paying their taxes? How do you address that?
That question would really be addressed actually towards the treasurer collector, because we don't technically deal in taxes, even though people call us the tax men. We're the valuation men. As far as anybody that doesn't pay, normal course of action is if they miss a payment, they get notified, they get a warrant sent out, or they get a demand notice, then they'd get a warrant, and then it would go to tax title. So if they fail to make one payment over the course of a calendar year, then about 3 weeks after the finalization of the fiscal year, late July, we advertise tax title in the paper, and that's usually when people call. And tax title gets advertised whether you are 50 cents short or you didn't pay $10,000, $15,000. So it's mass law for the treasurer collector to post that. And we get some people that come in very upset because they know somebody and they didn't, they always were current on their taxes, and the payment might have been a couple days later, a week late, it accrued 3 cents interest. Well, the law states that that's required. So, but the ultimate question would be answered by the treasurer collector. Yes, Paul.
It sounds like with longevity of life, taxes go up, cost of living goes up. Am I correct so far? Mm-hmm. And these elderly people are finding problems paying their bills. Mm-hmm. Water bills, electric utility bills. Would you say they're being squeezed out of the community? Are they being forced to sell their houses?
I wouldn't say that, and the reason I wouldn't personally say that is because Fitchburg is one of the most reasonably priced communities in the entire area to live in. Fitchburg is one of the more reasonably priced areas to live in. I hear a lot of people come in and say, well, I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to move to a sister community. Well, the sister community they often refer to has 30 to 35% higher assessed values, and they have a tax bill that's $1,300 to $1,400 on average higher than Fitchburg's. The only community in the area that's lower than us is Gardner. It's $89 less on the tax bill. You would have to go further west to get lower than that. You'd have to go to an Athol or a Winchendon. But we do what we can to keep our costs down. It's difficult because things go up. Every year the budget goes up 2.5% plus new growth. And it's like that in most communities because our costs go up too. Last year the insurance for the city of Fitchburg went up almost $1 million, and it's a cost that, that it has to be paid. It's just so, unfortunately, it's...
I understand what you're saying, but are you saying, you're denying the fact that people are being forced to sell their houses? The elderly people?
I'm not denying that. I'm just not saying...
Would you agree with it?
That's not our intent.
No, I didn't say it was your intent, I said, would you agree with that statement? Or
I would say
that
that it's getting
recognition?
harder and harder to make ends meet.
You're being kind of polite.
In every city in town, not just Fitchburg. Leominster has the same issues with their elderly not being able to pay bills, and they're 30% higher than we are.
Yeah.
It's not just a Fitchburg problem, it's a real estate market problem.
Well, yeah, but this meeting is about Fitchburg,
I understand that.
okay?
Good.
But everyone likes to compare to next door. And
Well, if you want to do a comparative analysis, then that's something else.
it's the best time to sell right now.
Pardon?
It's the best time in the last 30 years to sell.
Any other questions?
Are you saying sell your house so that you can maintain the car? All right.
I guess that's it, Chris. Any other questions before we conclude the meeting? I just want to announce the next Ward 1 meeting will be held on a Thursday, October 12th, 2023, and we're going to have the city clerk, Joanna Bellato, will be here to discuss any election information that you might need. So I just want to announce that, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Bernie, for